Hi there, boys and girls. We are going to get started on Indiana Lesson 11 Extra Practice. And so this is just going to be a more in-depth look at some of the different things you may run into when you're finding the area of a trapezoid. So we know what the formula is. We know that it's 1/2 the first base times the second base, or plus the second base times the height, or base 1 plus base 2 times the height. You might see it written either of those different ways. But what do we do when we run into some of these different situations? So like if we look at this first one, number 1 down here, this one is really very straightforward. If I was going to plug in these numbers, 20 times, it would be, let me write down my formula, sorry. It would be 1/2 and then times 20, that's the first base, plus 40, that's the second base, times the height, which is 65. And if you want to, you could pause the video right now, math that out. And if you do, that's great. But if not, through the magic of having the key, I'm going to tell you that that answer is 1950 yards squared. So that one's pretty straightforward. But let's look at another one of these that is a little bit less straightforward. So when we're looking at a trapezoid like number 2 or number 3 here, I'm on page Indiana 79. You might be saying to yourself, well, what is the base? What is the height? Because if you put the wrong number in the wrong place, you're not going to get the right answer. So we've got to figure out what's the base and what's the height. And actually the height is a really good indicator of what the base is, because the bases are always going to be parallel. So I'm going to use these 2 pens. So you can see here, if I put my pens here and here, you can see that these are definitely not parallel. They're definitely getting closer at this end and farther away at this end. But when I put them here, these are parallel. So that means that this is the first base and this is the second base, and then that would make this the height. Same thing is true here. You might be tempted to call the height, I'm making a video. You might be tempted to call 80 the height or 88 the height, but actually if you turn your paper, you can see that the 80s are actually the bases, and then the height on this one would be 30. And the answers to those, if you want to pause it and work those out, but the answers to those are going to be 425 millimeters squared and 2,520 centimeters squared. The other one I want to talk to you about is this one down here. For this one, we obviously know that the height is going to be 10, number 5. Height is going to be 10. This is running parallel. This is the first base. This is the second base. So we don't know what is that measure of that first base. But what we do know is that if this line is parallel to this line, which it is, and this line is parallel to this line, which it is, then if from here to here is 12, from here to here also has to be 12. So now we know what that base is, and then we would need to add these up. So this would end up being 12 plus 5 plus 0.5, which is going to be 17.5 for that whole thing is going to be our base there. The answer to this one is going to be, if you want to pause it, 147.5 feet squared. And then this one is the same way. We've got 10 all the way across. We know that this part is 5 and this part is 3, but we don't know what this part is and we don't know what this part is, but we can figure it out because we can take the 5 plus the 3, that's going to be equal to 7. So if we know the whole thing is 10 and those two are 7, then 10 minus 7 is going to be equal to 3. So this has to be 3. And again, parallel lines, parallel lines, parallel lines, parallel lines. If this is 3, this is 3. And then the answer for this one is actually going to be 18 meters squared, just meters squared. So that is how you do the extra practice for Indiana Lesson 11.